Welcome everybody to Friday Afternoon at the Manor. My name is John Joseph Massandrea, and it's an honor to welcome the Honorable Robert Oliphant, who I consider a friend and also a wonderful leader in our community. But before that, we're going to be having Susan Johnson, who is the wonderful person who brought the imagination and steers the helm of this remarkable program, Friday Afternoon at the Manor. Over to Susan Johnson.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Yes, we do welcome Rob Oliphant, who is our Member of Parliament here in Don Valley West, but also a vital part of the community. You will see him at any event, and he's going to tell us about where do we go from here? You know, what happens if, as, and when COVID lifts and finds us? What kind of life are we going to be looking at? So I'm interested to hear that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, John Joseph, and thank you, Susan, and thank you to the community at Manor Road United Church and beyond. The community in what we tend to call Mount Pleasant Village, but I know that you have tentacles which go well beyond your own community. And it is really a pleasure to continue to represent many of you. I know not all of you live in Don Valley West, but I suspect a large number of you do. As I said, my name is Rob Oliphant, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon, talking to you about what I've just been through over the last couple of months and what I've learned at people's doors as I knocked on their doors during the most recent federal campaign, and what I see to be the federal government priorities coming through over the next few months. And it's I really want to congratulate your community for finding a way to communicate with each other through the pandemic. And I think these are new ways of dealing with each other, not ways that I want to continue for long. I miss meeting people. I miss face-to-face conversations that we need to have more of. Things are returning to somewhat normal with still some restrictions, but as our country now is one of the top countries in the world for immunization, and really one of the top countries in the world for recovery in terms of keeping an economy going. We're in a very envious position, but much of the world is not there yet. And we're very, it's important for us to remember that until all of the world is healthy, none of the world is healthy. Until all of the world is vaccinated, none of the world is vaccinated. So we still have a large project to do outside of Canada. Even as we look at the tremendously good numbers in Canada, the virus is still there, and it will continue to mutate around the world if we don't end it everywhere. So it is our reality. It is something. When I look at this period of time, I'm very much reminded of my parents, who they were born in 1923, and they lived through World War II. It began when they were 16 years old and ended when they were 22. My dad was a member of the Royal Canadian Air Force, but their whole world was divided into life before the war, life during the war, and life after the war. And I was thinking about being a child in the 1960s, which wasn't very long after World War II. That was still the dominant social reality that my parents' generation had lived through. And I have a feeling that for many of us, this 2-year period of COVID, and hopefully it will be ending within that 2-year period by March of this year, this 2-year period will be iconic in that way. And we'll remember life before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and the hardships and the sacrifices that went on during this time, some sacrificing way more than others, but also looking at the future and seeing what life is after the pandemic and what we learned from the pandemic. And the pandemic has been very, very hard for many people. It's been hard for people who live alone. It's when people have been socially isolated, physically isolated. It's been hard for people with precarious employment or employment, particularly in sectors that were very hard hit. hospitality, tourism, small businesses of many kinds. And it's been hard on students who, the younger you are, the more pivotal this kind of time is for your upbringing, and it's really disrupted people. It's been hard on seniors who have been cut off from their friends and have had to learn new technology to keep in touch. And I'm so glad that Manor Road is helping so many in this community to stay in touch and to keep learning and to keep thinking and to keep engaging and to keep moving as a community, as individuals, and as a society. So it's been a tough time. And I think we've all learned something. We've all been tried and been tested by the fires of COVID. But we've also, I think, been inspired by neighborliness and by kindness and by the example of frontline workers, whether they're hospital workers who are still working way overtime in very trying situations, emergency workers, first responders, police, ambulance attendants, people in drugstores, people in stores that couldn't shut last year, and they're still recovering. They're still getting over some of that. And we're inspired by that. We're inspired by those heroes. And we're inspired, I think, by public health officials who day after day after day have weathered storms and abuse. I will tell you that the COVID pandemic has made our social cohesion more fragile because people are more fragile. And if people had mental illness or issues of distress or depression before the COVID, it's harder now. People are still coming out of that very difficult period. And I think people respond difficultly when they face mental health issues and struggles. And so we have to be mindful. And I think there's going to be some learning from that about how we as a society care for each other better and do that for those who have families that are close and those who don't have families that are close or even chosen families that they've been separated from. This has been a recession that's hit women more than men, and it's hit people who are already poorer more than other people. And it's clipped all of our wings. And so we're all feeling a little bit homebound and wanting to get out and move around. So we're doing that more and more safely. So this is the context of today. I come at this from, a fellow human being, a fellow Canadian walking the way we all walk and trying to live a life that it has meaning and purpose and good, trying to do what I would believe we as people of faith are meant to be doing. I come to it as a United Church minister. I'm still that. I'm just glancing at my screen and I see my Voices United handy there right beside my Bible, which many of you will recognize, but it's there because I do still preach on occasion virtually. And I need to look up the hymns and I need to practice them before a service. And I come at it as a community leader and an elected representative, someone who has been elected to try to take the concerns, the values, the goals, the ambitions of the people of this area of Don Valley West and Midtown Toronto to Ottawa and feed the desires, the concerns, the hopes, the ambitions into the agenda of the federal government. You all know that we've just come through this election. It was a difficult election. I will be very clear that I found people crabby at the door. I've always, had insults come hurling at me at the door, but this was even tougher this time. And I think it's because people have been shut up and they've been locked inside. And when someone came to their door, they were looking for someone to blame. And I think what has happened is people have often, tried to blame the federal government or the provincial government or the city government or someone, the WHO or China or something for this virus. And I would say the enemy is not one of our governments. The enemy is the COVID-19 virus. and it takes all of us to defeat that. But it was a tough election. But I learned some important things in this election about what the priorities are of at least some of your neighbors, if not all of them, and maybe you, and you can share them. I just wanted to highlight what I heard at the door and what I think my agenda is going forward, taking it to the federal government, or I think the federal government's going to be working on. The first is COVID-19. We're not done yet. We still have some miles to go before we sleep. We still have people who are not vaccinated. Today, we're learning good news about vaccines being approved for the 5-year-olds to 11-year-olds. And so we need to get those 3 million young people vaccinated. These are 3 million doses. I'm not sure it's 3 million or 1.5 million kids that age, but we need to get those kids vaccinated so that they can be safe. And the largest number of new cases has been among children. They don't get terribly sick with COVID, but they can still pass it on. I have a little bit of a cold, so I will probably drink a little bit of water every now and then. So we need to get people vaccinated. If any of you is not vaccinated yet, I hope you will get vaccinated. That vaccines are safe and they're our most effective way to defeat this virus. We've managed to stave off crises in our hospitals. Some of you will drive by Bayview and see that over the last spring, we had a field hospital set up at Sunnybrook because Sunnybrook needed to prepare in case the hospital was overwhelmed. We weren't, but it was used, but it was better to be safe than sorry. And that was the federal government funded that totally to make sure that Toronto had a trauma center, intensive care hospital like Sunnybrook ready to go. We still have research to do on immunology and the way this virus came into being and what we can learn from it about new viruses. So we have healthcare system that is needing some repair because things have been put on hold. Hospitals aren't built to handle a pandemic like this. They're built on an as-needed basis. So we have surgeries, we have elective surgeries, we have other procedures that are on hold, and now we've got to get going. And the federal government is going to be supporting that. Even though healthcare is a provincial issue, we will be providing the money with more physicians, more medical personnel, and trying to help hospitals with the personnel crisis that they're facing. The other part of the COVID story is, of course, the economy. And the federal government bore the burden of the pandemic, in that about 9 out of every $10, 90% of the spending that happened during the pandemic was spent by the federal government. And that was a decision that we made that said, we think the federal government has the best ability to withstand this mess. Better than the provinces, better than the cities, better than smaller municipalities, better than individuals, better than businesses. It will take on the burden. We'll help people, help cities, help provinces, and then shoulder that debt because we have the broadest shoulders in the country. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. We have a situation where we have spent a lot of money on people, on making sure that they had food to eat and making sure they had a roof over their head and they had emergency benefits, on small businesses to make sure they could keep going, on large businesses to make sure they survived, and now on targeted measures to make sure that we can help industries that are still recovering, but also keeping people going with enhanced employment insurance benefits. All of those things have cost money. I think Canadians knew it had to be spent. And we're going to be taking a long-term approach to get that back. So we're doing that. But we want to build back better. And so we've learned some things about how long-term care needs to be built. We've learned some things about hospitals. We've learned some things about housing. We've learned some things about the way communities need to be structured to face a pandemic that we didn't know before. We all know now that narrow sidewalks are problematic when you need to have 6 feet of social distancing. We need parks, we need recreation, we need space. We need schools that are properly ventilated. we need to build back better. And so that's what the federal government will be doing in conjunction with provincial governments and municipalities. That's number one. Number one task is COVID recovery, health, and economy. But we've learned some other things over the last little while. And I would say one of the big issues that I heard at the door, and I'm still hearing, is about affordability of life. And it hits people in different ways, particularly housing affordability for young people and newcomers to Canada trying to find a place to live. People who are underhoused, large families in small apartments, looking at the supply of housing and the demand of housing. And this is something I'm going to be doing more work on. The federal government has looked at measures to curb foreign investors who don't live here and just buy things and force the prices up. Looking at supplying more housing, especially affordable housing, but also housing that's affordable. A little bit different. Some is for some of the poorer people, getting them out of shelters and getting them into permanent housing, but also for people who are not poor. But housing is just now out of their grasp. And we're looking at a way of increasing supply, trying to keep demand measured, and trying to help on the income side to make sure that people have more income to be able to pay for housing. So housing affordability is a big issue in Don Valley West, and it hits in Thorncliffe Park, but it also hits on Yonge and Eglinton, and you're in between those two areas. So that's housing affordability, seniors affordability, young people, first jobs, all of that is big on our agenda. And we're not going to let that rest. We're going to keep making every stride, every step that we can take to make living in the middle class more doable. Lowering taxes on the middle class, probably raising them on the richer ones. So all the rich people out there are going to have to recognize that we're going to be demanding more. And that's part of what a Liberal government is going to be doing, to try to help people who are in the middle class and struggling to get into that middle class. We've done work on that. Canada Child Benefit, increasing old age security for people over the age of 75, and now childcare. I had an interesting conversation at the door. I was at a house or at an apartment on Erskine, not too far away, and it was a young couple. They both made a good income together. They had about $110,000 income. They told me their income. Their rent is $2,200 a month, and their childcare, when they take the childcare for one child and their rent, it's over $50,000 a year just to have a roof over their head and childcare for their one child. That's after tax dollars. That's not doable. It means that one person probably shouldn't work because it's too expensive to work, and that isn't good for an economy where we have major employment needs. We have employers that need more people. So we have a childcare program. 9 out of 10 provinces have adopted it and accepted it. Ontario is still resisting. Please, if anybody out there, talk to the Doug Ford government and tell them that they should get on board. The other provinces and territories have accepted it. It's a good deal for them. It's a good deal for Canadians. We need affordable childcare. So children, youth, forgiving interest on federal student loans, and increasing old age security, starting with 75 and up, but hopefully getting that 65 to 75-year-old group in there as well. So affordability. After COVID, number 2 issue is affordability, making life a little bit better. The third issue that I think is big on our agenda and in the minds of people in this area is the environment and climate change. We've just come through COP26. We recognize that the planet is fragile. It is at a crisis level. We are burning too many fossil fuels. The greenhouse gas emissions need to get under control. Canada has ambitious targets and a plan to meet them. We have to continue working around the world. It's not going to come with no cost. There will be a cost to all of us. And it's a cost in the change of lifestyle. It's a cost in making sure we have more urban transit that gets more cars off the road, and it's changes to our lifestyles. It's a big deal, and we're going to have to keep working on it. So that's planting trees is part of it. Weaning Canadians away from oil and other fuels. Alberta's still using coal for electricity. It's got to stop. And we have to find a new way to have to use less energy, and the energy we use needs to be greener. And we need to find a way that we can live well but live green, and that's going to be a big task. And I hope churches play a role in that, because it's a spiritual crisis as well as an environmental crisis. It is talking about our relationship with the planet and with each other, and we're part of that creation. And we have a pledge in our United Church creed to take care of the planet, and we have to live up to that. The last area I will talk about, sort of the fourth area after COVID, affordability, the environment, is our relationships with Indigenous people in Canada. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission laid out an ambitious agenda, and we have agreed to implement every one of their recommendations. It takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. But we are seeing society already frayed because of the slowness that we are experiencing with respect to that reconciliation. Indigenous people have been patient for a very long time, and their impatience is real and justified. And that has to do with, we all know about the residential schools issue. I was not shocked at the discovery of unmarked graves. It was in the report. I knew about it well, but I think Canadians woke up to the reality of children who died in the care of churches and the government. And we have to make up for that. And we don't only have to look at the past, but we have to look at the future. And we have to look at economic development and education and human rights and aspirations and racism and all the things that the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, raised for us as important issues. It is those 94 recommendations can change our lives too, and it's not just for Indigenous Canadians that we do this; it's for us too. We will all live better in this country if we find a new and better way to live together with the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people of this land. I think that's probably what where I will leave right now. We have targets in all those areas. We've got work to do. I'm interested in both your questions and your suggestions and your comments on things that we can do and can do better. So that's long-winded. I'm a preacher, about 20 minutes, about a 20-minute sermon. And so I think that's probably a good time for me to say amen.
Well, Rob, that was wonderful. And I'm sure there's questions from people. And why don't you come right up here? It might be easier than doing reverb and all sorts of crazy. Let's say your name.
Hi, Rob Oliphant. My name is Ann Piper. I'm Mona Piper's daughter. You may remember Mona as being the crossing guard.
I do remember Mona Piper. Yes, of course.
And you can take your mask off.
I just will say that yesterday I delivered a certificate for someone who was only 3 years as a crossing guard, much less time than your mom. But I wanted to give her a certificate because she was retiring, and the important work needs to be honored. And so I was over in Leaside giving a certificate. So, and I did think of your mom that day because of her long service.
Unfortunately, Mom passed away before COVID started, but in a lot of ways, I'm glad that she did, because I wouldn't have wanted her to have to live through the worry of her daughter having to go to work as a nurse in a hospital without any protection from COVID. It was tough. And I guess I want to know why the government didn't listen to the science from SARS. We knew that this was a SARS virus. We knew how SARS was transmitted. We knew it was airborne, but we kept denying and denying and denying and saying that it was a contact virus. It's not a contact virus. They're telling us now, 2 years into this virus, yes, it's airborne. It's transmitted through the air. And I guess I want to know what this government's going to do differently, because this is not the last virus that's going to come along. And I want to know that my colleagues are protected, that there is going to be that stockpile of N95 masks for the next round. I don't want to hear of any more healthcare workers dying because we weren't prepared, because we didn't listen to the science, because we didn't keep that stockpile of N95 masks. So I guess I just want to know, what are we going to do different? What did we learn from this pandemic? Thank you.
Do you want me to answer one at a time, John, or do you want me to take a couple?
How about one at a time? Yeah, that's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I think that's a really important and valid question. I'm just going back to SARS for a moment. Both as the United Church minister and then as the president of the Asthma Society of Canada, we reviewed a lot of the SARS data and found it really important for the work of asthma, because obviously people with asthma have a precondition that makes any respiratory illness even worse. So we followed that. I would say, yes, I think the federal government has something to answer for on this regard. I think, honestly, because healthcare is the provincial jurisdiction of the provincial governments, I think that's where we should be focusing that attention, that the delivery of healthcare is the responsibility of our provinces. They are funded by the federal government. The federal government, though, can't dictate to the different provinces what they're going to do. I am hopeful that those lessons have been learned well. I think we, because I was related to Sunnybrook very early, who treated the first COVID, or then called coronavirus patient in Canada, and then were able to isolate the actual COVID-19. Pretty early on was impressed with the way Canadian science and Canadian scientists moved. So I think we did that part well. I think we did vaccine acquisition very well. I mean, I was in Peru in August. I had to go down for 1 day to represent government of Canada at an event, and only 10% of people in Peru, Peruvians, were vaccinated, compared to 70% of Canadians and 85% of eligible Canadians having had one vaccine. So we did well at procuring vaccines. I would say the city of Toronto did well at their public health initiatives. If there's a weak point, I would say it was the province. That would be a weak point. I don't want to get partisan about that, because I don't think it's the fault of any one political party, but I think our provinces have not adapted healthcare quickly enough or fast enough, and on any issue. And this will be another one. So my hope is that we've learned. My hope is that we take care better and figure out ways that people are safer, that are working to take care of us. So on behalf of people of Don Valley West, as much as I am able to speak on behalf of anybody, thank you. And I am hoping as well that we have learned. And I'm inspired every day. I was listening to Teresa Tam today and thinking, we have really fine public health officials in Canada, and we just have to listen to them. And that we have to have provincial governments that are preparing better.
Oh yeah, what you want to do the next question? Hello, Rob? Was there another question you were going to respond to? No, or next
No,
question?
there was only one so
Okay.
far.
Okay, and Ayla, did you want to ask a question? And who's 416-422-1588? I don't know. Well, why don't you come on over and ask a question? Over to Susan. She's going to ask a question. Good.
Okay. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rob. As well, you know, because of where your office is, there's no end of new accommodation going up in the neighborhood. The problem is it's not affordable. And it's, from what I can tell, from what people have told me, you're getting less space for more money than there are pre-existing apartments. And a friend who has an apartment on Brownlow says they've got, vacancies, but people can't afford the rent. So this is I don't know that the word affordable is really being understood.
Yeah.
And also throwing in with something we're discussing here is that shopping, there are no real low cost stores. Like the nearest Food Basics is on Overley, the nearest No Frills is up Avenue North, near Lawrence. So sort of putting that into, you sort of need to make the neighborhood affordable, not just the accommodation. Okay.
Points all taken. And I think there's two parts of that. One is the cost and expense side, and the other is the income side. And, I have a big concern over on Broadway, Roehampton, Erskine, those streets where they had many low-rise apartment buildings. Many single women had lived there for many years. They were retired, often had never married, sometimes were widowed. And they often worked downtown at insurance companies, law firms, doctors' offices. And a lot of people got very wealthy because of their work. And they're not wealthy. And they were careful with their money. And they're renting an apartment, say on Broadway, for $1,100 a month, $1,200 a month. The building gets torn down, a new condo goes up, and it's being rented for $2,200 a month. And I'm seeing this regularly. This is a reality. And it is a crisis for people, for younger people and older people. I am finding the middle-aged people tend to be doing okay because their incomes are keeping up with the housing costs. We can talk about food in a minute. So the government is having to look at the problem from two sides. One is, how do we build more housing in Canada? Simply getting more of it built. We have a $10 billion, I say almost $11 billion national housing strategy, trying to move people into new homes. You can see how we're trying to densify certain areas, but it's still expensive. It's a supply and demand thing. As long as demand stays up, prices will keep up. And so we're putting a tax on, foreign owners who are buying them on speculation, trying to figure out how we do that. We're putting low interest loans for developers to build affordable rental housing, which helps. There's a new project going up at 100 Broadway that's got federal government money in. Again, it's hundreds, not thousands of units that we need. We believe housing is a fundamental human right, and we have to figure it out. And so there's a bunch of stuff on the expense side. On the income side, that is just a reality that, I was talking to some restaurant and store owners on Bayview the other day, and they're all looking for people. And I'm very clear to say to them, you're going to have to pay more money. Your staff doesn't make enough money to live in this neighborhood. And that means that costs will be borne by all of us, but they have to pay more. At the seniors level, we have to keep increasing old age security. CPP is increasing all the time, and that's a 20-year plan. Doesn't help the seniors today, but it will help people becoming seniors. It's a fully funded program. Old age security, we are pushing as fast as we can. It's not unlimited what we can do, but increasing it for 75 and up is a start. Increasing the guaranteed income supplement for poorer seniors, important. And keeping incomes going. So trying to help on supply side of housing and on the income side. With respect to food costs, we're all seeing it. I mean, I watched some both CBC and CTV news articles, slots on it the other day. Part of that has to do with, the crisis of COVID and transportation. It does, I mean, even now looking at climate change, we're going to have different things happening with respect to supply chain and getting food here. And there may be profiteering. And I think the government needs to look at profiteering and finding ways to help. I've noticed that when I go to Food Basics, I don't notice much of a difference in the price really between Food Basics and Loblaws or Metro, but there's a little difference. And I think we're going to be losing our Value Mart, whatever it's called, on Bayview shortly or in the next little while, because I think that's slated for development. And food security is absolutely important. I don't have a magic answer on it, but I'm aware of it. And so we keep raising the issue and I'll keep tracking it.
Thank you, Rob. Does Ayla, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Actually, I have two quick questions. One of them is the corner of Yonge and Eglinton on the southwest corner. I mean, that's just a total mess in there. And I know there were people wanting some parkland in there, but I don't think the developer's gone for that. I think it's just going to be another big building, very much like the one across the street on the northwest corner. And they lied there. They said, oh, they were going to put some sort of patio in. Well, they've never done it. So that's one question. What's going to happen at that corner? Second question, what about our homeless? I happened to be downtown yesterday. It's a sad tale of our country that we have so many homeless people on the street, and there's no way that it isn't costing us money to have them on the street and then having to look after them in healthcare and social services. I listened to a man recently from Finland, and they have no homeless, none. And what he said was, and I can't see it happening in our country, they are a socialist country, and they got all three layers of government to agree and put a certain amount of money in, and they build housing for homeless. They have jobs for some of these people who can have them. They have care, and it's still cheaper than having them living on the streets. So our homeless problem is just growing all the time. And you know about that because of the Roehampton Hotel. And I don't know what's going to happen at that place either. So that's it. Thank you.
Good questions. I mean, the issue around Canada Square and that southwest corner, I am tracking it. It's not in my riding. It's just outside of my riding. So Carolyn Bennett's the MP there. But I have talked to Josh Matlow, who's the city councillor for that side of Yonge Street. And Josh is tracking this. There is that property was owned by TTC. And there was, it's always driven me crazy that TTC has these pieces of property, but nothing over top of them. Like they have these sort of, bus barns and big areas that should be either underground or built up above them. And that could provide housing and all kinds of things and revenue to TTC. They're now getting it. They're now getting that they have to wake up. That particular corner, I understand, is Oxford Properties. They have a 20-year or a 50-year lease or something. But I would say if you're interested in that, talk to Josh Matlow's office, because he's the one guy who's actually really trying to do something there that I think is important. You're absolutely right about the north side where they did that infill and we lost, we need more public space. That's why I think Manor Road figured that out. We have a public space now. I do miss your hall, but I am very happy for the public space. Now, again, Josh Matlow is the one who
it was instrumental. absolutely
And
instrumental.
also the Manor Green over by the old lawn bowling area.
Yeah.
So Josh
He was
gets it.
instrumental in that too.
He's a visionary. Don't tell him how much I like him because I don't want him to get too head swollen. But I think he's just a fantastic city councilor who understands people where they live. So yes, I know about the issue, but I don't have much to do with it. But I am concerned. I live on Keewatin, a few blocks north of there, so it's my neighborhood as well. Homeless people, yes. They absolutely, I always say, you spend money on the predeterminants for health. You get people healthy and it costs less later. I think the issue underneath the homelessness issue in Canada is largely mental health and addictions.
Mhm.
It's not only affordability, which is part of the issue. A big part of it is many of the people who are on the street are trauma survivors, they are incest survivors, they are sexual violence survivors, they are alcoholics, they have drug addictions, they have schizophrenia, they have other mental illnesses. And this is a huge problem that in opioid addictions, all of that. And we have to be more creative. I'm really glad that Carolyn Bennett has been appointed minister full-time on mental health and addictions. That's what she's going to be looking at, trying to figure out that. I would say, let's have a town hall on that. I did one a number of years ago on mental health. Let's do another one. I did it at Manor Road, actually. Let's talk about it from the perspective of homeless people. The Roehampton was such a difficult wake-up call for people. I was frankly horrified at some of the attitudes. These are people with problems. These are not bad people. These are mostly people that bad things have happened to.
Mhm.
And yes, they have difficult lives. And yes, some of them cause problems, but they need a place to live. And there are people who think, well, we just don't want them here. If they have to find a place to live, they should be downtown. Well, that hotel was empty.
Yes.
And we were emptying out shelters. The city was emptying out shelters. They had to find a place to live. Thank goodness we had an empty hotel.
Yeah.
The city could have done a way better job at preparing the neighborhood, talking about it, providing for safety. Absolutely, the city, I think, really screwed up on it. But I'll never be critical of the fact that we have people living there. It's a good thing. And we should help them. So mental health, homelessness, addictions, John, let's take that as something that you and I should work on. Maybe a community town hall on it again. Ask Carolyn to come over, inspire some people to get engaged, maybe bring some people from Hodgson School or Morris Cody, and try to make it something interesting that we could do.
Well, maybe one of these organizations could be involved with that because they're the ones
absolutely.
that are on lines.
I do round tables on mental health. I have 25 professionals that I bring together. It's everybody from Crown prosecutors to medical practitioners, CAMH, addictions recovery people, the police, everybody. And we bring those people together to say, let's have a broad community approach. I'm on record. I believe that one of our issues is we need to decriminalize drugs, not legalize, decriminalize to get this out of the justice system. It just takes up too much time and effort, and it doesn't do anybody any good. We got to put those resources into medical care, into rehabilitation, into emergency response. That's what we should be doing. That's going to be a big agenda item for the next 3 years. People in Don Valley West are not all happy with that. They think that means I'm soft on drugs or soft on crime. Well, no, I'm going to be smart on crime, smart on drugs, not soft, it's smart. This hard on crime and hard on drugs thing just isn't working. And it's more expensive. You're absolutely right. So you get me wound up on that. I can go for a long time. I'm going to push on it again in this House, and our government is slow to move on it. Province is even slower, but John Tory gets it. So John
Yes, he
Tory,
does.
and he's come a long way. I think we're very lucky in Toronto to have him as our mayor, because he's moved over the last 15 years from being pretty conservative in every way to being imaginative now. And he really gets it. So the federal government has found him to be a very good partner. We kind of go over the head of the province right to the city, and we find him very good to work with.
Okay.
Thank you,
you.
Rob.
I have to go to another meeting, so thank you very much. It's been great.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you, Rob. I will follow up about having a town hall on mental health. I think that's very important. But we've had some great questions and some great insights. And thank you, everyone, for coming. I see Anne knitting away, making I think a sweater, which looks quite wonderful. And so, Rob, continue to be a beacon in our community and helping us, mend, heal, and grow together again. Thank you. We'll sign off for now. Well, hold on. Get Susan come back over. She's going to bid everybody farewell and come back over.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Hope you can join us next week when our speaker is Richard Haldane.
What is Caravana?
Yes, What is Caravana? And it's been around in Toronto for so long. I think people have just started to think of it, it's that parade in the summer, but it's a lot more than that. So I hope you can join us.
Bravo. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Manor Road, for being really a light on the hill. Not that much of a hill, but we can pretend it's a hill. It's a mountain, Mount Pleasant. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.